Support for Radio Friends comes from Homestead Senior Care, providing trustworthy, kind-hearted senior home care services in your loved one's home. All caregivers are thoroughly screened, extensively trained, professional, and reliable. Homestead is all about providing the highest quality home care service to fit you and your family's needs. Plus, if you would be interested in becoming a caregiver, they offer great part-time positions. Give them a call at 573-442-4333 or check it out at homestead.com.
And good morning. Welcome to Radio Friends with Paul Pepper on Thursday, February the 22nd. Glad you stopped by today. We have one guest who knows a lot about history with the State Historical Society. That would be the one and only JOAN STACK. JOAN, welcome back to Radio Friends.
It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
You and I haven't done an interview for quite a while.
Oh, yes. No, it's
But every
nice
time I
to
watch
see
you with Paul, it's like one big 8-minute long history lesson. But you make it so interesting.
Well, I'm an art historian, so I understand history in many ways through the visual, through various visual objects, whether they're editorial cartoons, illustrations, paintings, and a lot of people like to hear that sort of different perspective.
So that's your technique of bringing history alive through the visual arts.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But today is about Black history.
That's
right.
right.
A special exhibit at the State Historical Society?
Yes, but actually this is an exhibit in Ellis Library. Upstairs in the colonnade, we are downstairs in Ellis Library, but upstairs in the colonnade we have an exhibit that deals with the theme of Black History Month this year at Mizzou, which is War, Peace, and Black Progress. And we are collaborating with special collections from the Missouri libraries, and we have filled up the various cases that they have in the colonnade with different types of things. Special collections has brought in some books. We have brought in different kinds of visual culture. We have illustrations that appeared in Civil War magazines. We have some original artworks by a local artist here in town that some people may know, Kenny Green. He's very well known as a jeweler, but he is also a fine artist, and he did some wonderful images of the Buffalo Soldiers, who were those 19th century black soldiers after the Civil War, and he did some images that really capture the kind of intrigue and kind of mystery of those Buffalo Soldiers. And then we have a number of editorial cartoons on display dealing with Vietnam, dealing with the crisis in South Africa in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, Black history, it extends so far into our past.
That's true.
All the way up into just yesterday, right?
That's true. And we are focusing, of course, on American history, though the part on South Africa deals with these editorial cartoons that appeared in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, but of course they are dealing with history in another part of the world. But of course there are other activities during Black History Month that do deal with the African diaspora, the issues in Africa, various worldwide issues.
Okay. You brought a couple of things to show.
That's
I'm going
right.
to hold the first one up, which is a very interesting illustration, and this takes place on a mound?
Yes, this is an image of the Battle of Island Mound, which took place in Missouri in October of 1862 during the Civil War. This is a drawing done by the great illustrator Thomas Nast, and some of you may have heard of Thomas Nast. But when he was very young, he's still in his 20s, he worked for Harper's less as a cartoonist and more as an illustrator. And he, of course, was in New York. He was a German immigrant, and he got reports of this battle that took place on the Missouri-Kansas border between African troops, African American troops, and also some Native American troops, and some Missouri guerrillas.
That's wild to think of.
Yes, and what's especially important about this battle is at the time, the federal government did not allow African Americans to serve in the Army. Many of you have seen the film Glory about the Massachusetts Regiment of Colored Troops, but that had not happened yet. So the very first engagement of African American troops, and these were militia troops from Kansas, actually took place in Missouri. And this is an illustration of it. This image apparently convinced a lot of people that African Americans were good fighters, were dedicated to the cause. The story talked about the soldiers and said they fought like tigers. And it said that Lincoln was impressed reading this story and seeing this image, that perhaps he should change his mind about whether African American troops would fight.
I see. So just one of the many images.
That's one of many, yes.
Right. How about this one next?
Well, I'm moving all the way up from the Civil War to the last group of images in our exhibit, which have to do with South Africa. And of course, South Africa was a very controversial subject throughout the 20th century in America. During the era of Jim Crow, perhaps some people we're seeing similar things happening here with segregation, with apartheid laws that separated white and black people. Black people not allowed to vote in South Africa, but apartheid continued in South Africa through the 70s, through the 80s, into the 90s, and finally in 1994. Nelson Mandela had negotiated a regime change, and the first election where the citizens of African descent were allowed to vote, as well as the citizens of European descent. And that was the African people numbered about 80%, and the descendants of the European colonists were about 20%, and yet they had controlled the government for years. So this particular cartoon shows the passing of the torch. And one of the things I really like about it is Engelhardt, the cartoonist from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, uses iconography or symbolism that's very familiar to us. We see a torch that looks like the torch of the American Statue of Liberty. And we see this hand draped in the way that the Statue of Liberty is draped. But this liberty is a black liberty.
Yeah, it's a black hand.
It's a wonderful image dealing with that theme, the regime change in South Africa. Nelson Mandela, of course, wins that election.
So much history, so much to look at this exhibit, which is up now.
Yes, it's up now, and it will be up all the way through March. So March 31st is our last day.
Ellis Library, though.
That's right.
So go up to the colonnade.
The colonnade, yes, and there's a kind
there.
of a waiting area. There's wonderful places to sit. It's a kind of a grand area in Ellis Library on the first floor.
And then when you're done there, come downstairs to the State Historical Society.
Yeah, and visit our main gallery and our permanent collection. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And you guys are moving too, right?
We are moving. It will still be another year in the place where we are now, which is on the ground floor of Ellis Library. But we are moving to a new location, which will be on Cherry and 6th, I believe, and across from Peace Park.
That's
going to
be
something,
exciting, isn't it? Yeah, well, you've got the place here to talk about it.
Yes,
so we'll talk about it throughout the year.
Yes.
With Joan Stack from the State Historical Society. Joan, thank you for the history lesson.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Hope people come up and see these great images.
I'm sure they will. Thank you, Joan. And thank you for watching the show today. Again, if you'd like more information about any of this, you can visit the State Historical Society right on the University of Missouri campus. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email Paul Pepper at pepperp@missouri.edu. Again, Paul's just under the weather, but he'll be back next week. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.